Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Automation Hour. My name is David Litton. I will be your host today. We're missing both Jennifer and Rakesh. They're on the planes back from Trailhead DX today, so we're a little bit light today. But what Automation Hour is a webinar every other Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. We've got a few coming up. I'll be doing the next one in July. We're going to have a little bit of a break between the normal webinar schedule, and we'll kick it off again on July 21st. And then Jennifer will take the next one, and then we also will have Rakesh, who will be presenting in the intermediate series. So we've got a pretty awesome lineup for the rest of this year scheduled. However, we do have still some spots open for the intermediate series. So if you've got an idea of what you could do for that series, make sure you can either access it through the PowerPoint that will be added to the Success community and on our website. You can go submit your idea there, and we'll get in contact with you to get you set up. So logistics, all lines will be muted. We have chat, so if you have any questions, please use the chat. If you're watching on the video, or if we don't get to your question on today's call, we do have the Success community, so please go to the Automation Hour Success community and ask your question there, and somebody, either one of us or one of the many awesome people in the Success community, will be able to help you out. And we'll also be posting this recording on YouTube after the session. It will be on our website, which is at the bottom there, automationhour.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Concrete.io, who's been sponsoring the Automation Hour since we started. And here are the co-hosts. This is Rakesh, Jennifer, and I at Dreamforce this past year. And with that, I'm going to be passing it over to our presenter today, Chad Seals.
Hey, David, thank you. Let me know when you've sent it over, and I'll share. All right, let's make certain. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we're good.
Fantastic. All right, David, well, thank you very much. I am super excited to be joining you today. My name is Chad Sills, and I am a 7-time Salesforce certified admin. And I am aiming for 9 by the end of July. Hopefully I'll be able to catch up to David with his 1,500 certifications, but that will take a few more months. With David, I'm the co-leader of the Birmingham area Salesforce user group. Super excited about that. We have a ton of exciting things going on with our community, and really the Salesforce user groups are super exciting all throughout the country, but love to see Alabama represented. And to go on to who I am, I work at a company called Daxco. We are a software development company that specializes in member-based health and wellness software, and I manage our Salesforce instance. We're a wall-to-wall Salesforce user. And I have the title of Salesforce Architect, and I have that title because when you're a solo admin like I am, you can make up whatever title you want, and so I chose Architect. And additionally, since I'm making up things, I also like to call myself the world's best admin. And I took this because my daughter gave me a mug that I have on my desk that says world's best dad. And I really believe that's true, that I am the world's best dad, but only the world's best dad to my daughter. And that, of course, is because in my daughter's world, who's her dad? That would be me. And so as a solo admin, I also get to shape my own world. And so here at Daxco, I am also the world's best admin. So what are we going to take away from this time together? 1, my name is Chad. 2, I'm the world's best admin. All right, let's get started. So today we're going to discuss when to click versus when to code. So when should we choose the declarative features within Salesforce versus the programmatic features? This is a hot button topic that we see a ton in the community, that we've had a ton of requests for inside of our user group. And we see this because it's difficult to know when should we move away from the declarative, from the clicking within Salesforce, and move into the more advanced code in Salesforce. What functionalities, what limits do we have, what features are going to be required, what processes are we going to need to step into and learn, what resources are we going to need to have in place before we do that. And so we're going to today we're going to discuss when to click versus when to close. All right, so let's talk about clicks. So when we say clicks, we're talking about the declarative programming within Salesforce. We're talking about automating processes, automating requests coming in from our users via clicks, so without requiring a developer, without requiring code. So when we say clicks, we're talking about custom fields, approval processes, validation rules, workflow rules, process builder, and flow. These are the majority of, there's actually some that may be on the fringes, but these are the majority of what we're talking about when we say clicks. So when we're talking about the declarative functionality within Salesforce, how we can satisfy our users' requests without entering into code, these are the tools that we have in our arsenal. And when we're discussing code, we're specifically referencing Apex code. And Apex code is the code that runs in the background, and it's a bit different than our declarative features in one major way. In the Apex code cannot be created in our production instance. And so you can't write an Apex trigger, you can't write Apex code to go and do X thing inside of your production org, because if you don't know what you're doing, you very well could break Salesforce. And so what they have done is your Apex code can only come from a developer org that's then pushed into your production org. And that's very different than our declarative tools. With declarative tools, you can create and edit and customize and activate all within production. So you don't have the requirement of moving within and in and out of a developer org. So before we get too far into this, I do need to say that there's nothing new under the sun, and a lot of the principles that I'm going to be talking about today come from a number of resources that are available to you. So the first is something that you may have seen. It is by David Liu and Don Robbins. It's a Pluralsight play-by-play called Knowing When to Code in Salesforce. And so what David and Don do is they sit down and over a 2-hour course, they work through different challenges, different requirements that have come into them, and they work through how they choose which tool within Salesforce to leverage to satisfy that requirement. They talk about the limits and the procedures that they have, and then what resources they have in place to satisfy those requests, and they talk through what challenges they have in satisfying those within each of the tools. So it's an absolutely incredible resource, highly recommended. Additionally, David Litton has a fantastic post that we're going to reference throughout the talk today on his blog, Salesforce Sidekick, and the name of that is Keep Your Automation Simple. So I want to go ahead and apologize because I stole pretty much this entire deck today from David. That's only halfway a joke. All right, additionally, Marcus has a post on the Salesforce blog. It's an oldie but a goodie called When to Click Instead of Write Code. And last but not least, we have good old Trailhead with the module Process Automation. Okay, so when to click versus when to code. To begin, let's state that you must trust the process. There's a 3-step process for defining when we should click and when we should code. The first step is to write the story, to clearly define what the requirements, what the request, what the configuration that you're trying to achieve is. Additionally, you need to know your world. Just like I took an understanding that in my daughter's world I was the dad, and in Daxco I am the admin, you need to know your world. You need to understand what your world constitutes, what is inside of your world, and how is that going to impact the story. And then finally, in the process, we need to choose the tools. So we need to choose the appropriate tools. All right, let's take just a moment and break those down. To write the story. This means that we need to gather our requirements from our stakeholders. So what is it that we're trying to accomplish with our automation? What is it that we're trying to accomplish with our development? What is the actual requirements list that our stakeholders are expecting from us? We need to gather those, and then once we've gathered them, we actually want to write them out in story form. So if you're familiar with Agile methodologies, a story is just a summary in narrative form of your requirements. So whereas before Agile you may have written out your requirements as X does Y and A does B, C leads to X, now you would write that out as a story, and actually how this story the story of the user and how the user is interacting with your system. And we'll dig deeper into this when we get into our scenarios. I'll show you some example of stories. And then finally, in the step of writing the story, we need to publish the story. So the story needs to be physically written, and it needs to be published so that all stakeholders understand exactly what it is that we're wanting to achieve. So back to our process, we need to write our story. And then once we have our story written out, and our stories are requirements, what we're trying to achieve with our automation, we need to know your world. So how does this story, how does this automation fit into the scheme of your world? How does this story fit into all the other complex automations, all the other processes that you already have inside of your Salesforce org? So you might ask a question like, what similar stories have already been completed? And this is very important. Can this story scale? So if we were to add more data to this story, or if we were to take data out, if we were to add a whole bunch of opportunities to this process, or we were to pull in brand new cases with the different types, if we needed to scale up this story, could it scale? And could our org allow it to scale? And additionally, we need to know what tools are currently being used inside of our org. So if we've defined what our story is, and now we're looking at our org, we need to have a thorough understanding of what tools we're already using. So if our end goal is to define what tool we're going to use, we need to know what tools we're already using. And then, this is very important, what tools can you maintain? So what tools are you knowledgeable enough about, not only in theory, but also in application within your org, that you could actually maintain this story if it's implemented. So we've written out our story, we've now known our world, and then lastly in our process, we're going to choose the tools. Don Robbins says it's this way: all things are possible with code, but we should always strive for low code or no code. See, as we get further and further away from declarative and closer to programmatic efforts and development with accomplishing our stories, it's going to become more complex, and more burdensome. And so we always want to strive for the low-code, no-code functionality within Salesforce. And that's an incredible thing, the way that it empowers us, and that's why we make so much money, is that we can do a ton of things that previous to the declarative functionalities within Salesforce that only a developer could do. And so we always need to strive for low-code or no-code. But we need to be certain when we're choosing our tool that we're weighing the trade-offs of the different tools. And so are we knowledgeable enough about the current tools that we're using, and we're knowledgeable enough about the tools that are available that we can weigh the trade-offs of if we attempt this story within this tool, what trade-offs are there going to be? And one of those trade-offs may be like what I mentioned with the example of a declarative versus programmatic, and that one trade-off is that you can activate a workflow rule because it's declarative directly in production, whereas you can't activate an Apex code directly in production. So you need to understand the trade-offs between the different tools. Additionally, inside of those trade-offs, you definitely need to understand what your limits are. So how far can you go with the different tools? An example of this might be that you can't create a custom field with a roll-up summary type from cases on the account. That's a limit. The account doesn't have the ability to create that. So that's a limit that you need to be aware of when you're defining, once you've defined your story and you know your world, and now you're choosing your tool. And then you also need to know, will it scale? Will it scale? Will the tool scale? Not only will your story scale up and down, but will the tool allow you to scale? And so if you add a bunch of new data into this tool, if you add a bunch of new processes, will this tool allow your business to scale? Will it allow this process to scale? And then finally, the maintainability of the tool itself. And so can you maintain the process and the tool? Can you add on new processes? Can you take away processes? Can you manage this process if there's a change in the future to this story? Will you be able to maintain this tool? So we have defined our story by writing it out. We know our world, we know what's going on around our story and how it plays in, and now we're ready to choose our tool. We're going to strive for low code, we're going to understand the trade-offs, and finally, let's actually look at the tools that we have available to us. So we have custom fields, validation rules, approval processes, workflow rules, process builder, flow, and Apex. And you notice as we go down the line from 1 to 7, we're going to become more complex, more complex, more complex, but, and this is interesting, that it actually becomes easier to maintain as you go down the list, easier to maintain if you have a thorough understanding, a real healthy understanding of the tool. And so David has a really good post on this in his Keep Your Automation Simple, and that he begins walking through a scenario where when you just look at the story, it looks like that you could have a workflow rule for an email, you could have a process builder to update one of the fields, and then you could have a flow to go and execute something else. So you have 3 separate tools you'd be using for one story. But then he walks through in that story how you could actually consolidate those and make it one very simple process builder, and then consolidate all the remaining all the remaining tasks to satisfy that story inside of Flow. And so because he's a very sophisticated user of Flow, it is the more complex, as you can see by going down, but it's going to be able to do more, and it's more manageable, more maintainable for him. And so when we're choosing our tool, we can start at the easiest at the top, and then as our knowledge increases of our tools, we can begin using the tools below to manage our processes. So we have written out our story, we know the context of the story, and now we're ready to choose our tool. And so let's quickly walk through each one of these tools. Okay. I didn't want to spend too much time jumping back and forth between a demo org, and so I pre-recorded me moving around inside demo org, actually utilizing these tools. And so for our first example, let's just jump into the custom field. So we want to, for this example, we want to create a field to display the count of open opportunities on the account record. So on our account, how many open opportunities are there related to that account? So how do we accomplish this? We do this through a custom field. And so we go into our setup menu, we go to the object manager, and then from the object manager we select the object. We'll choose the account in this example. We'll move to field and relationships. We'll add a new field, and then you see that we have all the different options for our custom fields. Right. This example today, because we're just wanting to roll up and see a count of all open opportunities, we'll choose the roll-up summary and select next. We'll add in our label, add this a count of open opportunity, and select next. Then we're going to summarize our opportunity object, count, and let's add the criteria here that we only want to see our open opportunities. So we're going to do closed equals false, and then hit next. Right, we're going to make sure everyone can see it. We're going to save it. Now we'll add it to our page layouts for us. If we navigate back to our account record, move to the details, we can see that we now have a count of our open opportunities of 1. And we can validate this by going up to related and scroll down, and we see that we do have 1 opportunity in this stage of qualification, so it's not yet closed. So very, very simple. Very, very simple. We created a field that allowed us to see all the open opportunities on the account. Right? So that's our first tool. Our next tool is validation rules. So in this example, we want the customer priority field on the account to be locked whenever an open opportunity exists. So whenever an open opportunity exists on the account, we want to make sure that our customer priority field is not changing. And we could actually make this a more complex scenario by saying that we only want it to be able to increase, and so we don't want our customer priority to go from high to low, but we do want it to go from low to high. But just for time's sake, let's keep this simple. And so once again, to add a validation rule, you're in setup. Going to go to your object manager and navigate back to the object. So we're going to go to our account, and then this time we're going to go down the page to validation rules, and we'll select new. We're going to add in our rule name. Let's use the name of customer priority locked. So we're going to lock our customer priority when the count of open opportunities is greater than 0. And we're going to in our field for the customer priority, because we only want this validation rule to occur when our priority is changed. We're going to add in our field, and then we'll add in the function of isChanged, and then fill that in. All right. So now we have our logic in place. We will add in our error message. So this is the message that will appear above our field if this occurs. We'll choose our field. We want this to appear on the customer priority and select save. All right, so now if we navigate back to our record, if we attempt to update our customer priority field, there it is. If we attempt to edit our customer priority field, I'm going to change that from low to medium, we will see our error message. That's our validation. The customer priority cannot be edited because the customer has open opportunities. And so we've now moved. It's a bit more complex than custom fields. We're now at validation rules, but it's allowing us to do more. All right, so let's move to our next tool. The next tool is approval processes. So for this one, we want to lock the opportunity record and request approval from a sales rep manager anytime the opportunity has an amount greater than $15,000. So we want to add in an approval process. Anytime that our amount's greater than $15,000, we want an email to be sent to the manager. We want the manager to have to approve the opportunity. So we can do this all declaratively. We're going to go back to our setup, and then from setup, we're going to navigate to approval processes. And then we'll create just a one-step approval. This will be very simplistic, just for time's sake. Okay. We'll just call this a standard approval. Then we're going to add our criteria to say only when the amount is greater than our $15,000, greater than or equal to our $15,000. All right, and then we're going to tell it that we want to assign this approval to the manager by default, and select save. Okay. Okay, we're going to activate that. And now that we've activated it, we can navigate to our opportunity record. Let's go back to our opportunity record. And then when we submit this opportunity for approval, we should lock the opportunity. We see that submitted for approval correctly. And now if we scroll down, we see that Jeff Smith, who's my manager, has received an email, and in that email, it is requiring approval on this opportunity. So he will come in, review, and approve that. So we've moved from custom fields to validation rules to approval processes. Our tools are becoming more complex. They're allowing us to do more, but they're also, as you've seen, becoming more complex to manage. And it's requiring more knowledge to know how to move around within them. All right. Let's move to our next tool quickly, the workflow rule. So for this example, we want just a one-off, just one piece of logic. When the customer type is updated to prospect, indicating that a customer is no longer a customer, we want to remove that customer priority field. So when a customer is no longer a customer, we want to remove that customer priority field on the account. So to do this, we'll stay inside of setup, and we will navigate to workflow rules. Workflow rules is one of the, it's the automation engine. It's the more basic automation engine that's being replaced, I wouldn't say, by process builder. We'll talk about process builder. All right, how to workflow rule. We're going to call this update customer priority to none. And we're going to tell it to every time it's created and edited. But actually, we only want to do this when it meets our criteria. So let's scroll down. When our type is changed, so when our type is changed to prospect, which means it's no longer a customer, or so our customer is no longer a customer, we then want to do something. So we're going to add a field update. It's going to update the account. Going to update the customer priority to none. So then we'll choose our field. There's to the bottom. Customer priority. And we'll change that to none and select save. We're going to activate that workflow rule. Now if we navigate to our account and we update our account, we change the type from a customer to a prospect, which would indicate that's no longer a customer. We see that our customer priority is low. Let's change that to a prospect. Hit save. That should remove that customer priority. There we go. All right. So now we have executed our first automation, our more complex automation in workflow rules. And so our tools are becoming more complex, but it's allowing us to do more. We're now crossing within that object, crossing fields and updating. All right. Our next tool is the process builder. And so for this, we want, when the SLA field on the account is updated to platinum, we want all of our open cases to have a priority of high. So when the SLA field on the account is updated to platinum, higher, all the open cases should have a priority of high. So we've got to go across objects now. So this is more complex than what we can accomplish in workflow rules, so let's step into process builder. All right, we're going to change it to when a record changes. Object, choose the account. If this is new to you, there are a ton of resources on Trailhead concerning Process Builder, how to use it effectively. All right, this would be when the SLA is changed. So when our SLA field changes, because we only want to see it, we only want this to fire when it's updated to platinum. So we're going to say when it's changed, it's true. So when our SLA field changes, and also now we need to define what it's changed to. So on our pick list equals platinum. Hit save. Okay, so now we have our criteria. So let's add our. Now we're going to update all of the cases that are open for that account. So we're going to update the child cases. This is incredible that we can update all of our children records right from Process Builder. So we're going to cross objects. We're going to update our priority to high. Save. Okay, then we're going to activate that Process Builder. So that's active in our org. So to our account. Okay, we see we have an open case. Right, and so when we update this to platinum, our SLA field to platinum, that priority should change to high. Drum roll, please. Scroll down, and now it's high. All right, as you've seen, this is now more complex than what we're able to do within workflow rules. We're now in Process Builder, but it was also more complex to develop, to configure. It was more complex to create it. And so as we're moving down the line, we're able to accomplish more, but it is requiring more of our knowledge. It is requiring us to know more complex tools. All right, let's step in finally into flow. And so with this flow, we want, when an opportunity is close won, we want the decision maker on the opportunity to have the VIP flag on their contact record flagged. All right, so let me show you that. So let's go to a contact, and then from the contact, you can see that there's a VIP field here. And so this contact is on an open opportunity. And so let's go and create our flow, and then I'll just come back and show you what happens when we close that opportunity. So let's create our flow. Add in our lookup. We want to look up and find our opportunity. So when an opportunity closed wins, let's find our opportunity record. We're going to add in our ID from our opportunity. We're going to add it. All right, we're going to reference that later. Okay, so we're going to find opportunities that are closed won. So this we're looking for all opportunities that are close won. We're going to assign those IDs here. We're going to create a new variable. Right, and then we're going to make that input output. Input output allows us to see that within Process Builder. We'll talk about that in just a second. All right, so now we've looked up and we've found all of our close won opportunities. Now we also need to look up our contact roles related to our opportunities because it's a different object. So we're going to pull our opportunity contact roles. So any opportunity contact role that has the ID of the opportunity ID that we just found. Right. And surface that we only want to see those roles that are decision makers. So we don't want every contact tied to that opportunity. We only want the decision makers for their contact ID, and we're going to add that to a new variable and create a new variable, our contact ID. All right, so now within our flow, we've defined our closed one opportunity, we've defined our decision maker, and now we need to update our contact record. So we need to update that decision maker's contact record to flag the VIP flag. So update our contact to VIP. So we're going to update the contact object. Our field is the VM. We're going to find the field that has the ID of our contact. And then the field that we want to update is our VIP field. Okay. To true. Okay. And then we're going to piece these together, tell it where to start and what order to follow. We will save that flow. Contact. All right, so we have our flow in place, but now we have to associate that flow. We have to actually tell it how to run, where to run. We're going to activate that flow. So when should that run? To do that, we're going to use Process Builder to execute our flow. And an opportunity, we're going to say. All right, so when the opportunity is won, this is our criteria. So what records will execute this? So when it is won, so when we've won the opportunity, what are we then going to do? We want to execute our flow. Our action is our flow. To update the contact to VIP. And then what is our flow name? Update contact to VIP. So then we'll set our variables. We'll set our opportunity ID to reference the opportunity record. And save. All right, so now we're going to activate our process builder. So now, when an opportunity is closed won, the decision maker on that opportunity should have the VIP flagged on their contact record. Okay, so let's close this opportunity. Now we see that Andy Young was our decision maker, so when we navigate back to his record, the VIP flag is now checked. All right, so as you can see, flow is much more complex than process builder, and far more complex than workflow rules, far more complex than approval processes, validation rules, and custom fields. And so as we've gotten deeper into our available tools, they're becoming more and more complex, but they're also becoming much more powerful. And so finally, we have Apex. And I don't have time today to run through a full example of how to code within Apex and how to push that over into production. But I do want to push you towards a resource. David Liu has a Pluralsight course called the Apex Academy. It's actually a series of courses, and he will walk you through step by step how to code within Salesforce. And so if you need to know more about Apex, more about the development side of Salesforce and how to automate processes using Apex, highly, highly recommend the Apex Academy. Okay, so we know our tools now. So we can write our story, we know our world, and now we know our tools. We know what tools are available to us, our custom fields, validation rules, approval processes, workflow rules, process builder, flow, and Apex. Now, in the last few minutes that we have together, let's act out these challenges through scenarios. So let's act out this process through a scenario. So let's write our story first. If a customer's annual revenue is greater than $500,000, the customer priority field should be high, and the customer priority field cannot be set to low. All right, so that's our story. So if a revenue is greater than $500,000, that's a field on the account then our customer priority field should be high, that's on the account, and the customer priority field cannot be set to low. So all of this is happening on the account, it's not cross-object, that's pretty straightforward. And so then we need to know the world that this story is entering into. And for this scenario, we have, it's a Salesforce org for a rather small business. We have a new Salesforce admin, and there's very few automated processes, right? So knowing our world and understanding our story, what tools should we use? What tools can we use to accomplish this? So because it's rather simplistic, because the request, the story is rather simplistic, it's easy and straightforward, it's not cross-object, it doesn't need to be solved in the complex tools, and since we have very few automated processes, that means that we probably don't want to involve, we definitely don't want to involve Apex, we don't want to involve Flow, and since it's a new Salesforce admin, we may not even want to be stepping into Process Builder just yet, and so let's do the easiest possible let's use the easiest possible tool, and so let's use a workflow rule and a field update with a validation rule. And so these three tools together, very, very simplistic, very easy to use, even for a brand new admin, and they would be manageable for the admin as well. Because remember, it's important to not only note what you can create, but also what you can manage moving forward. All right, let's walk through another scenario. So if a customer has an open opportunity with an amount greater than 50,000, the customer priority field should be high, and the customer priority field cannot be set to low. Okay, so if a account has an open opportunity with an amount greater than $50,000, the customer priority field should be high. So this, pretty straightforward. It is cross-object, so we're getting more complex than the previous example. But now let's talk about our world. So what's the world that this scenario is happening in? It's a wall-to-wall Salesforce org, which means they're a very robust Salesforce user. They have a dedicated solo admin, and they have many, many automated processes. Okay, so they have many automated processes. So that means that we can probably move down the line of our complex tools that we can use. They have an admin, so they have a resource that would be there to manage, that would allow this process to scale. And they already have automated processes. So if they already have processes, we don't want to add more workflow rules to accomplish this.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's some noise. So let's choose our tools. What would our tools be? We could choose a roll-up summary, a validation rule, and a process builder. So how did we get there? How did we know what tools to choose? We said, what was our story? What was our world? And then what tools? We should use the simplest tools, but because we have a dedicated admin and we already have more processes, the simplest tool wouldn't actually be the simplest tool on the list, but the simplest tool to maintain would be Process Builder. So we have to think through the whole world when we're defining which tool we're going to use. All right, let's do one more scenario. So if two more scenarios. If an opportunity is open with a type of existing customer downgrade, and it has a probability greater than 50%, all open cases for that customer should have a priority of high. Okay, so what we're trying to accomplish is if we have an opportunity that says, hey, this customer may be leaving us or downgrading their partnership with us, then we want to take all of their cases to a higher priority to make sure that they're solved sooner. All right, so let's know our world. So what world does the scenario live in? It's an enterprise, a very large Salesforce org. They have a dedicated team, and they have many automated processes and Apex triggers. So what could they use? Since it's cross-object, it's going to go from the opportunity to the cases. We couldn't use workflow rules. We could use Flow. This would be a very good use case for Flow, that we could do all of our work right within Flow. We have a dedicated admin team that would be able to maintain it, but it's not complex enough to require Apex triggers, but if we had the resources necessary, we actually could do this in Apex, so this is one of those just judgment calls. But since we have a dedicated admin team, since we have a team of admins, we'll choose to complete this scenario in Flow. All right, so finally, scenario 4. So when to click, when to code. So let's use our story. If a customer has an SLA of Platinum and has more than 2 open cases, the customer priority on the account cannot be changed to medium or to low. So if a customer has the SLA field set to Platinum and it has more than 2 open cases, the customer priority on that account cannot be changed to medium or low. So that's our story. Let's know our world. So this is an enterprise org, another big org. They have a dedicated admin, and this time they have a dedicated developer. And we already have one Apex trigger on the account. If a customer has an SLA of Platinum and has more than 2 open cases, the customer priority on the account cannot be changed to medium or low. So cannot be changed screams validation rule to me, but because it's cross-object looking at cases and at our account, it's going to be difficult to use validation rules, and we can't use roll-up summary fields because you can't go from the account to cases. Those are those limits that you have to be aware of. So I know all my tools well enough. I know that I have a dedicated admin and developer. I know that this is cross-object and it's getting rather complex. So for that use case, I would say that we need to use Apex. So that's all, folks. So trust the process. Write your story, know your world, and then choose the appropriate tool. And additionally, push your boundaries. So if you're comfortable with custom fields and roll-up summaries with validation rules, then move to workflow rules. If you're comfortable with workflow rules, move to process builder, from process builder to flow, and from flow to Apex. Push your boundaries, always pushing yourself to learn more and to develop to be able to develop more complex logic within Salesforce. But finally, do what's best for your org. You know what's best for your org. You know what you're going to be able to manage and what tool that you know best to be able to execute on your stories. So do what's best for you and for your org. Because remember, you're the world's best admin. And with that, thank you very much. All right, David, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad. That was awesome. So right now, we've got some time for questions. If anybody has anything they want to ask Chad.
Stunned silence. That's what it is.
It's the summer. Everyone's ready to go to the pool, I guess. We'll just sit tight for 1 second. And if there's no questions, we can end a few minutes early. So once again, we have the success community with the group Automation Hour. If you do have any questions that you think of after this session, or if you're watching the video on YouTube, feel free to reach out there. Chad is part of the success community, and we'll be able to take on any questions directed at him, but there's also everyone else in it that can help out. This will be posted on YouTube and our website, and thank you, Chad, for the awesome presentation and your time today, and thank you, everybody, for joining. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.